great again. Thank
Could a single tweet from Donald Trump shake the foundation of global trade? With the BRICS nation threatening to challenge the dominance of the US dollar, Trump has drawn a red line, and it's 100% tariffs. This bold move could redefine international trade and economics. But is it a strategic masterstroke or a ticking time bomb for the US economy? And what would tariffs of this scale mean for the global trade and everyday consumers? Let's break it all down. Since the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency. Most international trade, especially in oil, relies on the dollar. This dominance, known as the petrodollar system, gives the US enormous economic power. For example, countries around the world would need dollars to trade, which keeps the currency in high demand. This allows the US to borrow cheaply and maintain a powerful position in the global financial system. But for decades, challenges like BRICS have questioned this status quo. To understand Trump's tariff threat, we need to talk about BRICS. BRICS started in 2006 with Brazil, Russia, India, and China. South Africa joined in 2010, turning it to BRICS. BRICS is a coalition of the world's most influential emerging economies, with the primary goal of challenging the dominance of North America and Western Europe in global politics and economics. Recently, the group expanded further, adding Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, Egypt, and Ethiopia in 2024. This expansion boosts BRICS' influence with a combined population of 3.5 billion, 45% of the world, and over $28.5 trillion in economic output. With Saudi Arabia and Iran now part of BRICS, the bloc's influence over global energy markets grows exponentially. If oil trade starts moving away from the dollar, even partially, it could weaken one of the dollar's strongest pillars, the petrodollar system. But it's not all just about numbers. BRICS argues that the Western nations dominate critical global bodies like the IMF and the World Bank. They want more representation for emerging economies and have even set up their own new development bank, lending over $32 billion for infrastructure projects. Now here's where Trump enters the picture. In a fiery social media post, Trump declared, quote, "The idea that BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor move to any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar. Or they will face 100% tariffs. They can go and find another sucker." Trump's threat targets the BRICS nations' growing desire to reduce their reliance on the dollar. But here's the kicker. Imposing such tariffs could lead to massive price hikes for American consumers. From Brazilian coffees to Chinese electronics, products that you rely on daily could suddenly become a lot more expensive. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Can BRICS really replace the US dollar in global trade? Replacing the US dollar is a massive challenge. The US dollar accounts for nearly 60% of global reserves and is deeply embedded in global trade. There's been talk within BRICS about creating a common currency to reduce reliance on the dollar. For BRICS to succeed, they would need to overcome internal divisions and agree on a common financial system. A tall and huge order given their economic differences. On paper, the idea of a unified BRICS currency sounds revolutionary. But let's be real. This is easier said than done. It's almost impossible, at least for now. The BRICS nations have vastly different economies, from China's industrial powerhouse to South Africa's mining-based economy. And Brazil have smaller export-driven economies. Reaching a consensus on a single currency is no small feat. At their 2023 summit, the idea of a BRICS currency wasn't even on the table. That said, there are other ways that BRICS could challenge the dollar. They could create a digital currency for international trade, or simply conduct trade in their local currencies. Even if BRICS were to establish a digital currency for trade, it would face legal, logistics, and even technological barriers. Consider how even the euro, created under far more cohesive economic conditions, faced decades of preparation and adjustment and challenges. For BRICS, those members differ wildly in political and economic stability. This becomes exponentially harder. However, incremental steps, like China and Russia, already trading in the yuan and the rubles, could weaken the dollar's dominance over time. And let's not forget about each country's motivations. China wants to extend its influence globally, particularly in Africa. However, Russia sees BRICS as a tool to counter Western sanctions. With Iran now in the mix, BRICS could take on an increasingly anti-Western tone. The real question here is, are BRICS nations really willing to risk short-term economic pain for long-term gains? Now, back to Trump. His threat to impose a 100% tariff is extreme, even by his standards. Why is the US so concerned about a potential BRICS currency? It's because the dollar is the backbone of the global trade. For decades, countries have trusted the US dollar for its stability, its liquidity, and the strength of the US economy. But cracks in this dominance are beginning to show. Several countries, not just BRICS nations, are growing frustrated at the US using the dollar as a geopolitical weapon. For example, sanctions that cut off nations from dollar-based systems have pushed them to seek alternatives. If BRICS manages to create a viable alternative, it could erode the dollar's dominance, potentially destabilizing the US economy. If 100% tariffs were implemented, this would mean that BRICS nations like China, Brazil, and South Africa could face sky-high costs to export goods to the US. Such a move wouldn't come without consequences. Tariffs would drive up costs for the US consumers, fueling inflation and making everyday goods more expensive. On the flip side, BRICS nations could retaliate by limiting exports to the US, disrupting global supply chains. However, some of Trump's allies believe this is part of his negotiation strategy. Scott Bessent, his pick for Treasury Secretary, has described Trump's tactics as escalate to de-escalate. Trump's tariff threat alone follow a similar pattern. Recall that in 2018, the trade war between China, where escalating tariffs initially disrupted global markets, but eventually led to renegotiated terms. But can this strategy really work against a bloc as influential as BRICS? Does Trump's hardline stance strengthen the dollar's dominance or accelerate its decline? Or is this a far bigger gamble with fewer guarantees? Now, tariffs of this scale would send shockwaves through the global economy. Supply chains would be disrupted, prices would rise, and the geopolitical divide between the West and the global South would deepen. Meanwhile, developing nations dependent on BRICS trade could also face economic instability. This isn't just about BRICS versus the US. It's really about the future of global economic power. So, can BRICS really dethrone the dollar? Probably not. Not in the short term. Internal challenges and global dependencies make this a long uphill battle. But BRICS isn't just a talking point anymore. It's a growing force in international trade. Whether Trump's strategy succeeds or backfires, one thing is clear. This is a narrative far from over, and its conclusions could redefine global power dynamics for decades to come. And Trump's aggressive stance highlights just how serious this fight is. The US dollar isn't just a currency, it's a symbol for America's global influence. What do you think? Is Trump's tariffs threat a genius move or a recipe for chaos? Now, if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment in the sections below. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss our next videos coming up.